I'm so glad to see you. You have so much life. I've always admired you so. I wish I could be more like you.
Jack, for example, said, "Oh, you don't want to play Melanie, you want to play Scarlet." I said, "I don't want to play Scarlet, I want to play Melanie." It's because so young, I had for 4 years been earning my own living, going through all the problems of a career woman, self-supporting, and even contributing to the sport of others, which is what Scarlet did. That's what Scarlet did. So I knew about being Scarlet in a sense. But Melanie was someone different. She had very deeply feminine qualities. Scarlet was a self-absorbed person. She had to be. Career women have to be. That's all there is to it. But Melanie was other people oriented. And she had these feminine qualities that I felt were very endangered at that time, and they are from generation to generation, and that somehow they should be kept alive. And one way I could contribute to their being kept alive was to play Melanie. And that's why I wanted to interpret her role. I was called for a test, simply a silent test, just to see how the two of us in costume would look together. And that's when I first met him. And I walked onto the set, and they said, "Would you please stand next to Mr. Flynn?" And I saw him. Oh my, oh my. Struck dumb. And I knew it was what the French call a coup de foudre. And so I took my position next to him, and I was very, very formal with him, because that's the way you were in those days. We had never met, and we just stood there next to each other. Oh. Agents Phil Berg and Bert Allenberg called me into their offices, South Beverly Drive, 121, I forgot the address. Could have been that, in August of '43. And with them was Martin Gagg, a marvelous man and lawyer. And they said, "We want you Martin to talk to you about your situation. He thinks there's a way out." So Martin explained that there was a California law which limited the right of an employer to enforce a contract against an employee for more than 7 years. And that no actor had dared to take advantage of the law by asking for declaratory relief, which is to say, an interpretation of the law as it applied to an actor's contract. We went into court first, the Superior Court, Judge Charles S. Burnell presiding, in November of that year, 1943. And it is true that Warner Brothers' lawyer did put me on the witness stand. And they said, "Be very careful, because he will try to make you angry and try and make you appear like a spoiled movie actress." And oh, he was so wicked. Oh, gimlet-eyed. And he would say, accusingly in thunderous tones, "Is it not true, Mr. Havilland, that on such and such a date You failed to report to the set to play such and such a role in such and such a film. And I'm remembering Martin Gang's instructions said, I didn't refuse, I declined. So all this time, the judge, I noticed that the judge, he had his hand in front of his face, and I couldn't figure out whether it was his spectacles that were twinkling or, in fact, his eyes. But we certainly had his attention, and I thought maybe I have a little hope here. I think maybe I have a chance after all. And indeed, about 3 months later, or more than that, it was March of 1944, around the 15th of March, I was up on the island of Adak in the Aleutians visiting the patients in the military hospitals. Someone came to me, a U.S. soldier, and said, we have a telegram for you. Well, this was really quite extraordinary up there in wartime. And it was from Martin Gang. And it said, you've won in the Superior Court of, Superior Court of the state of California. Warner's naturally appealed immediately and then joined every studio in town from employing me. Every studio in town, I think they sent out 125 injunctions, and half of the studios no longer existed. But they did a thorough job at that. There really wasn't any decision, any doubt about the right decision for me to take. And one of the nice things I thought was, if I do win, other actors feeling frustration such as I feel will not have to endure that. They'll take the suspension, going without pay, of course, but knowing they will not have to serve that time again. And indeed, I didn't realize that how much it could mean to other artists in the profession until actually about 2 or 3 years ago, I was at a luncheon in Hollywood, and I sat next to a very charming and very able man, very highly regarded man, Roger Mayer, a lawyer. Now, he was not related to Louis B. Mayer, but he was apparently with Metro for a certain length of time. And he said what that meant to writers, you can't imagine. Writers like Scott Fitzgerald, and, well, Faulkner was one. He didn't mention those particular names, but indeed the names he meant were of equal stature. He said those men would be put under contract and then assigned some scene to write in a film for which they had no natural inclination and no knowledge. I mean, say a Western with a writer whose great specialty was the Deep South. He said those men couldn't bear to do a poor piece of work, and they knew that they would, and that they would risk their great international reputations in going ahead and trying to meet the requirement of the studio. Now, when you won your case, they were thrilled because, of course, they were perfectly willing to go without pay until they were assigned some kind of work for which they had a feel and knew that they could do a distinguished piece of work by. You know, our fellas, our actors, they were extraordinary in World War II. They all went. They all went. Jimmy Stewart, He was a bomber pilot, 21 raids over Germany, Clark Gable, tail gunner. The others in the Navy, Marine Corps, they were extraordinary. Now, when they came back, you see, all the time they were at war, they were on suspension. When they came back, they would have to serve that time all over again. And at the salary, which was by this time outmoded, because when they were lending people right and left, the producers were paying the actor the normal salary, which was the contracted salary, but they would collect from the producer they were lending the services of the actor to, they would collect a lot of money and keep it. It didn't go to the actor. So certain actors really had quite high prices. They didn't get the money, but the price for their services had risen during the war through this system. Now, that meant that these actors would come back and have to serve. Their services would be infinitely more valuable, but they would still get the same salary that they had been receiving 5 years before. And Jimmy Stewart came back, and all those others, Tyrone Power, the lot. And he wanted, of course, to take advantage of my case. And it was suggested that he better not risk anything. He'd better ask for declaratory relief. Did it apply to an actor who'd gone off to war? And of course it did. And that was settled straight away, because it was a question not of work, but of calendar years. And therefore, all those chaps, those brave, splendid young men, were able to negotiate new contracts.